Hey guys, got a neat piece of news across the desk today. Kept me from having to do any real thinking about this cast. Anyways, so Atlassian basically has decided that they are no longer going to offer the self hosted version of their whole stack, Jira, all that kind of mess. And the thought occurred to me, it's like, so why do people actually buy the self hosted solution for, well, any of these DevOps solutions or practically any of these software as a service sort of offerings? And the reason I ask that is because it's quite obviously just flying in the face of practically all economic knowledge, embracing specialization and especially the globalization of markets has pretty much been the magic secret sauce of the entire last 40, 50 years of economic growth all over the world. Essentially, understanding the fact that there are going to be people and places and groups with expertise that literally no one else is going to have, or that they can acquire, but their acquisition of it and usage of it is just going to be so much less efficient than other established players in the market. So, for example, growing bananas in the around the equator is going to be infinitely more profitable than growing them in Moscow, right? It's a similar thing with regard to, say, people who are doing self-hosted Atlassian stack. You are never, ever going to be as good at hosting Atlassian from a point of view of securing the system or making it as high performance or anything that actually matters to the users at your firm of this particular software as a service solution and all these DevOps things. You're never going to be as good doing that as, say, Atlassian themselves, right?
Right, about the only thing that you could do to get that slightly different is some sort of customization that you wanted to apply for yourself that you've written yourself. Then that sort of thing maybe kind of makes sense.
But
But on the other hand, a lot of these services like Atlassian have gotten advanced enough with, say, their pluggability, their ability to function as a platform, that people can make integrations rather trivially and have them work even on the cloud platform.
and most importantly, if it's useful to you and it can be integrated on their cloud platform, why aren't you selling it? Because if it's useful to you, it's probably going to be useful to somebody else. Just saying.
Right, and if you can scale up that and run it efficiently, or even more efficiently than the parent company is, then why aren't you doing that? It's one of those like, okay, maybe it's part of the license terms, but if that's the case, then talk to the parent company and be like, hey man, we got a farm of this stuff. Hook me
Yeah,
up.
yeah, and just say, look, we'll just subcontract for you. I mean, who cares? We've got the magic secret sauce, which astonishingly unlikely. But suppose this had even happened. That's when you decide I'm just going to make money any way I can, and it turns out I'm actually better at hosting this stuff than the firm that actually makes it. And so we're
You
going to go
know,
ahead and subcontract for them and just take it off their hands and let them focus on what they want to focus on.
right. And I mean, there's been businesses like that before where,
Mm-hmm.
say, they basically got a cloud version of something, some sort of component of their business that kind of evolved around their ecosystem and that they eventually acquired. That sort of thing actually happens all the time. But
Oh
it's
yeah.
one of those like, if you're a company that's doing this self-hosting thing of a cloud product, some sort of self-hosted option, then why aren't you going for that angle?
Yeah. And really, it comes down to why people actually, at the end of the day, choose these self hosted options rather than going with the cloud option, which is always cheaper and always better from a point of view of how it works for the users. The reason they do this is because they're emotionally invested in the idea that I got some secrets, man. I really need to protect this stuff. I need it all to be on my network. I need it to never escape. I need
I
all
need
these
that
important
veil.
things. Yeah, well, but the point is, it is an investment in the idea that my secrets are really, really super important and they matter a lot to me. When the fact is that, I'm sorry, I don't care how nice you make your network. Any really skilled corporate espionage operator is going to be able to social engineer their way in, and they're going to get your source code, whether you want anything to happen or not. It's
Well,
going
right,
to
and
happen.
and this even ignores the bigger threat, which almost always has been insiders.
Yeah, just a hacked off insider that's going to have access to the source code because they have to do their job, or access to a particular like product plan. All it takes is just one, even like unintentional loose lips to let these sorts of things happen and give information to your competitor.
Yeah, a lot of times it doesn't even require malice aforethought.
Yeah, and that's where it's like, so what are you really protecting here? Nothing. You're just protecting your ego. You're saying, oh, we're so super good that we are capable of defending our secrets. No, actually, you're not as good at protecting your secrets as another party is. And guess what? If another party is actually compromised, you have a tort against them. Unless you specifically surrender that in the contract, which most of the time, if it's something like a big business kind of contract, you're going to say, no, we're going to have a service level agreement, and if this is violated, then you're going to pay us money.
Well, right, and that's kind of the
and
other
if you
angle
fail,
of why this is important is because if you fail, the problem with the breach ultimately at the end of the day was you didn't secure your shit.
Yeah, and
whereas
the point is you
get a breach and it's on this cloud hosted platform, who's on the hook?
Yeah, they are.
They are.
Yeah, and they have to pay you instead of you had to pay a sysadmin and still get breached, and you don't get anything out of it when you could have gotten paid.
Right. Or, and on the other side as well, it's one of those things where we've talked before about these types of incidents where insurance would actually make sense. But ultimately, the easiest form of insurance in this is outsourcing it to another company, so that's their problem.
Yeah, and that's one of the core strengths of economic coordination and specialization that a lot of people, they don't really think about until it's too late, is that the intermeshing concerns with regard to liability and how much better that makes your life, making this, quote, not my problem.
Well, and not only that, the unburdening that does on your cognitive load, both for your management and your staff, whether it be your sysadmins, who almost every company I've worked at, the sysadmins are pretty much overworked to a T. Yeah. There's always something that somebody's holding on to they don't want to really release their grip on, even if there's some sort of cloud solution, something that could help them. And sometimes even the sysadmins fall into that trap too.
But the point is that, is it really a great use of your company's resources to expand your system administration department or overwork them and have to pay them overtime when you could use that money for something else, like, I don't know, building your product, hiring and making a better sales organization or a better support organization? Almost always, I can guarantee you there is a better use of your money. So just pay your vendors and be happy. I mean, it's almost always, when you look at it, it is almost the last thing in your cost of goods sold is the SaaS solutions you're using for whatever it is you're selling, if it's worth selling at all, right?
Yeah, and I mean, if they're ultimately mispricing it to where their cloud solution is not actually as economically viable as hiring, sysadmins to run the self-hosted thing, then that's actually the cloud provider's problem. And if that sort of thing persists, then yeah, you can pretty much guarantee that this company is kind of cuckoo.
But again, then that just presents you an opportunity that you can say, look, we figured out a way we can host this much cheaper than you actually host. How about you just outsource this to us and we'll keep the difference?
Yeah,
right?
Exactly. And so if they're good at building that product, but they're not actually as good at building the cloud infrastructure and maintaining that at a low cost, then all that screams to you as business opportunity, to be frank. And anyone who leaves that sort of thing unnegotiated, at the very least, is potentially leaving money on the table.
Yeah, and so hopefully people start to think a little bit harder before they actually do these sorts of things, because almost always the companies that are making this, they're not stupid. They're actually capable of focusing correctly on how to deploy their systems and maintain them and tweak them for performance and stuff like that. It is almost never the case that you're better at doing this. So it's always some kind of emotional investment, some kind of
risk aversion,
and some kind of ego investment in idea and sort of playing house rather than making money.
Right, because the mind, whether it's minds in corporate or it's an individual, we're all very good at keeping ourselves alive, whether that's the organization you're in or your own body. But we're not so good at excelling.
Yeah. And that's really all it is. You are capable of forgiving things, your own failings, and so it doesn't feel as bad whenever you fail, whenever it's something that you ran and you were in total control of it, even though at the end of the day, you're hurt much worse when you fail directly and there's nothing else to catch you.
Yeah.
You know?
Yep.
And so that's how a lot of these firms, they just keep going from disaster to disaster with their internal systems, and nobody ever really faces any consequences because they never really want to admit that, well, gee, it turns out that I was doing this for no good reason. Because
right. I mean, and that's a pretty typical story you'll hear sometimes on the internet about a sysadmin where he leaves the company and he leaves these 3 notes to a guy, says, hey, whenever shit hits the fan, open these 3 notes in order. And the first one, is basically blame the predecessor. And then the second one is blame the vendor. And then the third one is write these 3 notes.
Yeah. That's a classic story. Yeah.
It kind of highlights that problem where in many ways mistakes are unavoidable, especially in systems administration or that sort of thing. So where you can actually take that load off, you get rid of one of those links in the chain that can fail. Because ultimately, just like with any machine, a corporation ultimately is a machine for making money. The less working parts, the less that can break down.
Yeah, and that's really what it comes down to, is that this is just one less moving part you have to worry about, one less complication, lower your cognitive load, increase your profits by just making things not your problem. That's really all we got to say about it. So hit that like and subscribe. Feel free to hit us up anytime you need anything done, and we'll see you all later.
Thanks.